I was not able to say his name. But eventually, I asked for a piece of paper, and I wrote down the names of all the presidents in alphabetical order. And I think I held the piece of paper up and indicated that I knew it was one of those guys. What's so interesting is because I could write that down, then everybody thought that my writing was just fine. Another question asked that caused me great consternation concerned the clock on the wall in my hospital room. Each day, Dr. Smith would point to the clock or watch on his wrist. I assumed that he was asking me to recite the numbers on the clock, and I couldn't do it. But I am a good student, so every night and every day, when he was not there, I would practice. And finally, one morning, I woke up, and suddenly I could. And I remember saying it out loud: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12. After number 7, I could only speak those numbers in Spanish. On the next morning, however, I was able to recite them all in English, and I was incredibly proud of my accomplishment. And I was ready to show off my newfound skill. This was also the last day that I left the hospital. Dr. Smith checked me out, telling me to go home and do anything I felt comfortable doing. He also suggested that I consider taking a nap every afternoon, just to recharge my brain. Dr. Smith then ended his final remarks by pointing to his watch. Oh, I was so happy. I was anxious finally to tell him the numbers: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. But when I was finished, neither he nor my family, who was in the room, clapped at my accomplishment. It seems that he didn't care about the numbers. He wanted me to say clock or watch. And of course, at that moment, everybody in the room thought, maybe my brain was more askew than they originally thought. Well, I was really annoyed. So as soon as I got home from the hospital, I had Armstead look in the thesaurus, and I spent the next 3 weeks memorizing these words and practicing them every day to be able to say them perfectly. 21 days later, I went to see Dr. Smith for my first checkup, and I waited for him to point to his watch. When he didn't, I finally pointed it to him and said, "This is a watch, a pocket watch, a chronometer, a clock, a timepiece." And he said, "Okay, what is this?" And he pointed to the leather band. I hadn't practiced that. And this was a frustrating process that routinely served as hindrances and yet motivations for my recovery. What is my reflection? I am a teacher. I started out my career by teaching at Minnelusa School, 6th grade. If there is one of my former students, I run across one in the audience, I apologize to you. How many times did I destroy a child's motivation or enthusiasm for learning by not clapping at his progress? When you recover from a stroke, you gotta start all over again. And you make very small learnings every day. But it's always a lot easier if you've got somebody to cheer you on. Well, I began recovering at home, and one of my first ventures out of the house was to my local bank. My goal was to make my transaction without anybody knowing that I had had a stroke. So I practiced for 21 days with Sue, my speech therapist, so that I could say, "Hello, here is my deposit, and can you tell me the bank balance?" So I got there, the teller deposited my money, and then she looked up my account. She then stated that there was now a new policy at the bank, and before she could give me the amount, she needed me to tell her my mother's maiden name. Well, I was totally caught off guard, as I knew I could not verbalize this word. I could only say that I had practiced with my therapist, and Lun was not one of them. I did know, however, that I could write her name down, so I wrote it down on a piece of paper. I then looked at the teller and informed her that perhaps it would be a better bank policy if anybody could write their name down as opposed to speaking it. I thought it would be better bank security. Well, she was agreeable to this suggestion. I left the bank happy that my goal was accomplished, and I had in fact increased the level of bank security. Well, practicing for 21 days is the magic number for me, and for years I have been telling people that changing a habit takes 21 days of practice for the neural pathways to solidify. Because of plasticity of the brain, it can reform itself based on life events. I knew that I could speak again if I was willing to take the time to do this. During the first months after my stroke, I worked to capture 1 or 2 or 3 syllable words, and then I moved on to 4 syllable words. So each day, even now, I have to keep practicing new words. During this time, I opened an office in Malaysia, and I went to give a presentation at the university, and I had to learn to say Kuala Lumpur, which is the capital. And I was so happy when I got to the university and they introduced me, and I said, "I am so happy to be in Kuala Lumpur." And I have to tell you, it took me 21 days to learn to say that, at which point 50 people in the room all stood up and said, "Oh, around here we call it KL." Well, sequencing numbers is still a challenge for me. While written numbers are not difficult, it is hard for me to translate any numbers that are given to me orally. Voice messaging is huge, especially when somebody says, "Call me back at 303-670-7920. My brain thinks they are speaking Greek. If they would say 303-660-7920, I can write it down. Well, I never know when I'm going to face a challenge, like giving credit card information or dialing a phone number. Even though my brain is processing the right numbers, I am never sure that I'm saying the right numbers. Once I was in Cleveland, and my airplane reservation was canceled at the last minute, and I had to find a hotel for the night.